Hey, this is Max. Welcome back to another CSR2 video. I am here with round 3 of the CSR2 frequently asked questions. I want to thank Extra Droid X for letting me use his account for the purpose of this video, partly because we have gotten his account pretty organized and it reflects some of the points I'm going to make about car selection and car building. So the question today is going to be, what cars should I build and why? Okay, so that's a big question that gets asked a lot. Is this a good car to build? Can I build this car for Tempest? Is it going to be good for Tempest? So let's look at some fundamentals of car building in this game to answer those questions. When you talk about, is this a good car to build? The first thing you need to do is look at the Fusion and Stage 6 accessibility. Can you get Fusions and can you get Stage 6s for a particular car? Obviously, applying to Tier 2 and up because Tier 1 does not have Stage 6s, but the Fusion aspect still plays into the cars you pick. So, in the prior facts, we talked about how to get Fusions, but when you're talking about evaluating a car for a build, you need to go look in your inventory. One of the first things you should do is look at the inventory of parts you have available for a particular make. For example, Bugatti. Here we have a Bugatti with limited Fusions and almost no Stage 6s for some of the Bugattis. So that means, as far as Bugatti is concerned, if you were to try to build it, you're not going to get very far. Chevy, another brand where it's hard to get Fusions, even if you're showing a decent amount of Fusions, you have to think you need enough to fill out all the greens to get to the blues to get to the reds. If you're low on any one of these, it could stop your build. And then you're stuck because there are no sources to get additional Fusions and Stage 6 quickly. All right, so you're giving me all the bad news, Max. What's the good news? Well, the good news is there are certain makes and models in the game that you can get Fusions and Stage 6s for very quickly. But before we get there, what cars must I build? Well, generally speaking, if you're in a milestone crew, the one car that you're definitely going to want to try to build every season is the PC car. The advantage of building the PC car, of course, is that by doing so, you're acquiring parts, Fusions, and Stage 6s throughout the season, and you may end up with a car that is actually ready for Tempest. So, a PC car that you have parts for could be a potential Tempest choice. So don't forget that you should build the PC cars because you have to do it anyway, but don't go overboard because some makes and models of the PC cars, much like the Bugatti, much like some of the more strange brands like the D8, like Spiker, you're going to have very hard time getting Fusions and therefore should not be a priority. So if I were to rate cars by priority, and that's how I really do my garages, I rate cars by priority build, priority number 1, priority 2, and low priority. So it's kind of like high priority, mid priority, low priority. That's how I build my garages, and that's how I focus on cars. How do I evaluate that? First, the inventory, as we talked about. You need to know that you have the parts. But more importantly than that, you want to look for cars that you can build full, as in fully maxed with all Fusion and Stage 6s without resorting to keys, waiting on events, and hoping that you get lucky. In the sense that you have to use keys or hard to come by resources to acquire those parts. There are many cars in the game that it's easy to acquire parts on, and those are the ones you want to prioritize as primary choices. Not to say you build every one. You still have to make sure the car doesn't suck. But most cars that can be built to full are actually decent for the purpose of getting around in the game for most events and including live and Tempest. So, for example, Amelia's M4, LB-M4 is one of my recommended choices for Tempest 3. Why? Because by the time you get her car, you should have at least a half-decent Tier 3 car anyway, but assuming that you were using a Mustang or even an M4 that you bought without stars, you have now acquired a purple star car that you can move on in Tempest with for Tempest 3. The main advantage of Amelia's Coupe, and this applies to any car that you can buy for in-game cash in the dealership, you can buy that car and strip it. Those particular cars, and you really should browse through the dealership to find them all, those particular cars are extremely important when it comes to building your garage. So when you ask yourself, what car should I try to build? First thing is, what make can I get fusions easily for? Followed by, what specific models can I get stage 6s for? The make is the BMW, the model's the M4. So what happens is, in BMW brand, you can get fusions for any BMW in the game. That's the good news. By stripping any of the BMWs you can buy, which includes the M4, regular M4, and the M235i. If you were looking just for fusions, this is cheaper, faster to deliver, and overall, in the long run, more fusions for your buck versus the M4. But the M4 gives you the stage 6s you can now apply to Amelia's car and fully max her car, which is actually decent for Tempest 3 as well. So BMW is a brand that you can build. In addition, BMW has a T3 car that can beat the entire Tempest 3 Tier 3 without stage 6s. That is my secondary priority cars. So first priority cars to build are the ones that I am guaranteed to be able to fully max without resorting to keys, events, or just dumb luck. Now, dumb luck still applies. Here's why. Everything in the game runs on an RNG system. That's called a random number generator. So no matter that you bought the car and stripped it, each time you strip, what parts you get is still, quote, random. So luck still applies, because when you're down to that last fusion or two, or that one last stage 6 you really want to get, RNG will screw you multiple times before you get lucky. Meaning, for that final stage 6, you might end up stripping 10 cars. Versus in the beginning, almost every car will give you something useful. So that's the nature of stripping cars. Now, talking about stripping cars, how should I go about stripping a car? Well, so first of all, never strip the only car of any brand or model that you have. Never do that. First, save one of every car in the game. Meaning, if that's the only one you got, do not strip it. If that's the only one you got, do not strip it. Once you start getting duplicates, you can then contemplate stripping. However, cars like this, which is very good and can be built to full fusion and beat Tempest 3 at stage 5 only, and you got a second one, you might want to save it and use that for your elite time trials as a backup. But generally speaking, if you have one of each car, don't strip it. If you have two, you can start contemplating stripping. As far as stripping cars, you don't want to strip star cars if you don't have to, unless it's the third one you have, second one you have, you definitely don't need it. If you're stripping, you should be stripping the dealership cars, because they were the ones that you primarily will use to get fusions, and that's a habit you should get into, of buying them and stripping them. So when it comes to stripping cars, one of the things you need to keep in mind, and this account is pretty well stripped down on extras. I don't see a lot of duplicates in here. So that means that the owner has been stripping the extras and focusing on collecting parts. But at the same time, if you notice, cars that are hard to come by for fusions, like Mercedes, Bentley, okay, you don't see those cars getting built. But the Huracan Coupe, he's building it. Smart move, good and smart move, because the Huracan Coupe will allow you to get through Tempest 3 Tier 5 and take down Harkness for his car. So this is a primary choice, because you can fully max it without relying on luck that much. Okay, you don't need to pull keys to get the parts. Plus, generally we get a lot of Lamborghini parts anyway. Same thing with the Amelia's LBM4 Coupe. If you get it fully maxed, very easy for Tempest 3. So this account's well sorted as far as picking the right cars to build. You are going to build some other cars just because of events. There's nothing wrong with building them. Also, don't forget, you might need a car or two just for those regulation races, your cups, and stuff that happens on the map every season. So it doesn't hurt to have a few extra cars built. But again, don't waste a lot of effort on cars that you cannot easily get fusions for. So Fusions, source of S6, prioritize the entire build. The ACS2 sports a great car, but again, impossible to get stage 6 unless you ran through a cup and it rewarded you one, or that it gets selected as a PC car in the future. Cars that are used for milestone that you already built, even if it's built, you need to evaluate whether it is going to be something you're going to focus on continuing after the PC Cup, because while the car is good, Honda Fusions are very hard to come by. And if you prioritize the Honda as your car of choice for Tempest, you may be stuck at some point with no recourse to get additional parts. So understand that anytime you're looking at the car, always try to find a car you can get fully fusion and fully stage 6 that can also take on Tempest first before you start looking at other options. Although this Varus Civic, with its level of upgrade and fusions, certainly would basically run right through Tempest without breaking a sweat. Okay, because it can beat Tempest at stage 5 only, and this car is at stage 6, is almost fully maxed with almost full fusion. This is a very well set up T3 at this point, so that is a good choice for Tempest 3 Tier 3. Also, you still have this car as a backup, and you have M4 Coupe, which is getting there, but since you have Amelia's car, I would build her car and not worry about the M4, which is elite now anyway. So there are a lot of little calculations you still have to do, but the main thing is you want to utilize the stripping car method to acquire fusions and basically line yourself up with the makes and models of cars that you have some guarantee of getting far in the game with. For example, again, one of the common recommendations for Tempest 3 Tier 2 is the Porsche Boxster. You ask anybody in the game, they always say, oh, the Porsche Boxster is the best you can use for this. Yes and no. Yes, it's the best you can use for this in many ways, but no, it's not the best choice for most players because they don't have the parts and they don't have the stage 6s, and they're not going to get the stage 6s anytime soon. Neither are they going to get the fusions. So if you got a Boxster that's built like that with that many fusions, is it good for Tempest? Absolutely not. So that is the thing that you need to understand as a player. And that's the reason why I'm making this frequently asked questions type video, to give you the answer. The answer is the best car generally requires you to first have the fusions. Without fusions, without access to stage 6, the best car in the game, the fastest car in the game, is meaningless because it's going to sit in your garage, half built like this, without the parts you need to get anywhere. So don't get caught up on the idea that a great car, because everybody says so, is the one you should build, because you have to look at your parts and your stage 6 access in your inventory to figure out whether that's a viable use car or not. Lamborghinis. Notice he's been stripping a lot of Lamborghinis, lots of fusions, although this one we could use some more. But if you compare that to his status with Porsche, and I know Porsche is P, where is it? Right here. So if you look at the status with Porsche, yes, you have some, but you're missing a lot. And the biggest problem is here with stage 6s. The Porsche 718, you have no nitrous S6, no body S6, and no turbo. Engine is not used at all in the build. Trans is not used at all. So you got the 2S6 that is basic. Oh, I don't want to sell it. You got the 2S6 that's basically useless to the Porsche 718 box. Oh, wait, that's a Spider. Duh. What am I looking at? Sorry. My point is still stands though. Even if he had these two here, they're not used in the 718 at all for any build. So you have a pointless S6. Now, nitrous is a good S6, but if that's the only one you got, you're not making it through Tempest 3. So that's the point. The Boxster is a great car, but is it a priority build in your garage? Maybe not. The priority build, in this case for T2, looking at his garage, would be actually the GTO 250, because that's the one car I know only needs 2 stage 6s to get through. Plus, he's got another option here, the Rocket Bunny GTI. Now, the question then is, of course, you still need to know whether the stage 6s you have are going to be enough to get through the Tempest challenges. I can tell you that there are plenty of videos out there with different cars being built and evaluated for Tempest. You should do some research. But the GTI Rocket Bunny, without the tire, and I'm going by memory here, but I think without tire S6, it's going to be real tough to hit the sprint. Versus the body and the nitrous and the engine is helpful to get through the speed traps. So he's almost there, but I wouldn't necessarily put all my eggs in one basket here and hoping that this car would do it. In the end, each of your garages are going to be different. This is why it's very hard for guys like me to get a question, hey man, is this car any good? Well, what parts do you have? That's always the first question. So understand that the answer to whether you should build a car really revolves around whether you can get fusions and S6. Just keep reminding yourself that cars that I can get fusions for are always better than cars that I cannot get fusions for. But events will give you access, limited time access to fusions. Spending will give you access to additional fusions. So your mileage is going to vary on a particular car based on how you go about building. Now, let's take a look at his Ferrari Gto here. I have to look at the stage 6s to evaluate it. And again, I know from when I did my testing that if you have trans and tire, these two stage 6s, you can make it through Tempest 3 Tier 2 with this Ferrari, assuming you have full fusion. So he is ready. Another advantage of the Legend cars, and it's an advantage and kind of in a sense, a bad temptation, is that you can elite these cars to make them faster by a bit, and the performance will improve. The problem with that is there's no guarantee that the faster performance improvements will necessarily get you through all your challenges. So be very careful there. You still need your stage 6s, and you need to have the right ones. So when it comes to a garage build, and I like the fact that none of the cars that are not really needed or useful are actually built. That's part of the reason why this person is sitting on 18 million at rank 104 versus many 104 rank guys sitting on 18,000, because they're building stuff over the place, wasting money on cars that they could not get fusions for. So they'll put it to stage 5, spend the money, and then realize, oh man, this car sucks because I don't have any fusions. You need fusions. You need stage 6s. So makes and models. Makes that you can get fusions for, it's priority 2. Models within the make that you can get full stage 6 and fusion should be priority 1. Those are the cars you should focus on first. Then it's a little bit of research. You need to go on Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, and look up the particular car and find out what it runs fully maxed. Because if it's absolute garbage fully maxed, even if you can fully max it, it's probably best if you don't waste the energy. RS5 Coupe has pretty severe limitations in how far it can get, even fully maxed, as compared to, say, the Mustang GT Premium. So between the two, even though you could fully max both, utilizing the dealership strip method, I would go with Mustang GT Premium. That, of course, is not something you're going to know unless you go do some more research. So in answering the main question of what car should I build and is this car any good, those are the things you need to focus on. To summarize, fusion access and stage 6 access first. Without access to those things, the best car in the game is worthless to you. Secondly, after that, a little bit of research and a little bit of browsing through YouTube or Facebook. The Tips and Tune page is great for this. You can go to the Tips and Tunes page on Facebook, ask questions. Hey, what is the time this car runs fully maxed? You can reach out to me on YouTube and say, hey, Max, is this car any good for Tempest? I'll be happy to answer those questions. That's a little bit of research you unfortunately will have to do because all of us have different garages. But once you have the answer, the real focus is how hard is it to get parts? Because a Mercedes, as good as the car may be or it may not be, you're not going to get fusions as fast as you're going to get for a Ford. Same thing with a Honda. You're just not going to get the fusions as fast as you're going to get from an Audi. So keep that in mind. That is the strategy and the answer to the question of how do I decide if I'm going to build a car. Now, finally, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of some of the makes and one or two of the models that are kind of important. I already showed you BMW with the M cars. That's a good one to know. Lamborghini, the Huracan, very good car, very important to know because for many of you who are playing free, when you finally get a 3-star Huracan, that's going to be the car of choice for all Tempest. So don't elite the car, save it for running through the Tempest challenges, but not the no star, the 3-star. That's a good car. The It's better than both the F12 and the 570S, which are the other two alternatives. But from a brand standpoint, McLaren, Lamborghini, Ferrari, Audi, Ford, BMW, and Aston Martin and Dodge, and Nissan, you can get fusions relatively easy for. So anytime I see a car from one of these makes, I will kind of perk up a little bit and go, ooh, I could build this potentially. Let me test to see if this car's any good. I may put a stage or two on it and figure it out. If it doesn't gain Evo very quickly and it seems to be a slow build kind of car, I just abandon it. But if it turns out pretty decent, I'll continue to go with it. Nissan, for example, the GTR Premium is a good car in the beginning for Tempest 1 and 2, but it's not so good for Tempest 3. It won't do much except for the sprints for you, and it's not really that, well, it's fast enough, but it's kind of pushing it versus many of the other choices. So the unfortunate truth is that at some point you may get stuck because you just don't have the right car, and the right car you have, you just don't have the parts. That's where the other aspect of building a car in this game comes in, and that's patience. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, you're going to have to rely on patience and a bit of luck. That's just the way this game works. There's no way around it. The only way around it is either cheating or spending. And I don't really recommend either one. So I think if you just play patiently and play smart, you can advance in the game quite far, have a nice collection of cars, and have right and workable cars built so you can still get through long-term events like Tempest, like Legends, and all the map stuff. Now, any questions, feel free to ask me. This round, the fact, is very limited because each topic really can drag out to a 1-hour video very quickly. So I'm limiting it simply to how you look at these cars to evaluate for building. To summarize briefly, and I've probably said this 10 times during this video already, look at your car, look at the make and model, look at your inventory to see if you have fusions and stage 6 access. If you already have the parts, go for it. If you don't have the parts, then you have to look at whether you can have access to the parts in some other way. If you only can get access to the parts through limited events or crates, the answer is you probably want to wait. Okay, focus on cars that you can buy from the dealership and strip for parts. As a final tidbit, when you strip a car, don't strip from this screen. Strip it from this screen where you're looking at the car and you go like this to strip it. It avoids costly mistakes of stripping the wrong car. And believe me, many people have done it because they thought they clicked on this car when they actually left it on the other car, and then they were too quick and they clicked strip and didn't read and stripped it, and next thing you know, they're writing out to support begging for the car back, and the only answer I've ever seen support give is, you stripped it, I'm sorry, we cannot give you the car back. Okay, so I'm sorry, they may even give you some keys as kind of a consolation, but guess what, trying to pull a particular car even from 100 silver keys, good luck. So don't strip a car by accident. Be very patient, strip from the main garage where you're looking at the actual car you want to strip, and then strip it, and even then read that it's saying that's the car you're stripping before you click yes. I know it's slower, but believe me, crying about that 5-star purple star, well, not the purple star, but like a 5-star milestone car you accidentally stripped, that's far worse position to be in than just being a little bit slower stripping any car. All right, I hope this round of fact is helpful to you. I hope this gives you some idea of how to look at your garage as far as building cars. Again, it's very hard to answer all these questions in a very, how would I say, very succinct way that can cover everybody's situation. So this is a general round of fact answers. If you have specific questions, ask them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. If you have any comments as to your experiences you want to share, I'm certainly happy to hear them and sometimes they'll give me some ideas and stuff that I can put in the later round of facts. This is not to address anything about tuning or live racing. So this is purely limited to basic car building selection. All right, if you like the video, please leave a like. And if you like getting notifications when I put up new videos, subscribe to the channel so notifications will come to you. As always, thank you for watching my videos. I'll catch you next time.